heavily involved in the Gutenberg project. More low-key, we've been lobbying against extension of the performing rights. So that's more or less what we do. And our position is that the creation of new material is highly dependent on access to existing material, whether it's really old material, fairly recent. And we feel that that a draconian enforcement of copyright in its current form is more of an impediment to the creation of new material than the wholesale infringement of copyright as it is going on right now. And basically we are in favor of a thorough reconstruction of intellectual rights, such as a reduction of the term of copyright, abolishment of database rights, and abolishment of patent law. Thank you.
My name is Arjen Kamphuis. Normally I work in open source lobbying and IT things, and picking sides in a fight like this is sort of a hobby that got a bit out of hand. My position on copyright is that it's a really cool idea, but the current implementation seriously sucks. Human beings have been making culture in all kinds of ways for about 15,000 years. And about for 100 years we've been putting some of that on little plastic discs or tapes. That 100 years was the 20th century and it's now over. So now I think we can move beyond some of those models. And just like with the last 5 other switches from one sort of technology to another, so we had the piano player in the 1890s, where then the musicians started saying, oh, this technology will destroy us. And of course, more music was made, and then the music was put into records, and other people became very upset because that was destroying their business model. And then other people started playing those records on the radio, and then the people who made the records got very upset, and so on and so on. And we went through VHS video recorders and MP3 technology, and now we are in little hard disks and smart cards. And what we see every time, basically, is that there are a bunch of people who have grown really fat and wealthy of the existing situation, who will then defend that existing situation even when it has basically passed. And my personal position is I never watch broadcast anything anymore, yet I don't miss anything, and I have a home network with a couple of terabytes of stuff, all of which I own legally, by the way, because of the Dutch situation where I can download legally as long as I don't trade it. So that's my personal view on it.
Okay, thank you for your elaboration of your position. Is there anything that you want to add at this point? Okay, let's. As far as I'm concerned, there's plenty of things to discuss. Let me add one bit based upon your introduction. For instance, Walter, you say you want to reconstruct. Can you be a little bit more concrete?
Yeah.
What do you want to reconstruct and how do you want to reconstruct?
For starters, I would be in favor of a reduction of the term of copyright to maybe around 15 years. Maybe with the possibility to extend it through registration, which is completely opposite of what the Berne Convention says since 1883, I think. Another thing is there's a lot of distinctions made between various kinds of work, like software. Software is treated in a really weird way in copyright law, which makes it, in fact, impossible to criticize or to quote software. I would like to make the copyright protection of software dependent on the publication of the source code, for example. And I would also like to fix the really poor situation authors are in when negotiating contracts with the distributors.
Okay, thank you. Another thing is, Arjen, you said that copyright is a good idea, but the implementation sucks. Can you give a concrete example of what, in your eyes, sucks most?
I think that because of sort of the power imbalance between large content companies who've had, a century to build up capital and big organizations and teams of lawyers versus individual artists who tend to be young, poor, and uneducated in the ways of the law. So there's a massive power imbalance there, combined with copyright extensions that are sort of moving in the direction of eternity minus a day, when originally it was 14 years, in an age when things moved a lot slower than today. So I think those two aspects combine to make a situation where it seems that the law is now serving a limited number of companies and no longer serves us. And I think that's always a good point where you have to say as a society, well, either we're going to change the law the nice way through our parliaments, or we're going to change the law the not so nice way by just being massively civil disobedient, and then at some point the whole system will fail. And I'd like to do the first thing, which I think is a bit more sort of orderly and leads to less arrests and all kinds of other, unhappiness. But if necessary, then we'll take the second route.
Okay, that's a threat. To ask you to respond to that, yes.
No, yeah, okay. What I think is that copyright is good for the small independent creator. And if you feel that there are large corporations that are abusing copyright, I think in essence copyright gives the individual creator the power to negotiate with large corporations. If you feel there's an imbalance there, you need to address that not by diminishing the right of that individual creator, but by anti-competition regulation and perhaps a contract law at the moment there is in development in the Netherlands a model contract law for copyright, which basically seeks to address the balance between individual creators and large corporations.
And what about the length? Maybe that's also an issue that
Well, again there, if you look at the internet, one of the theories is that the internet can seek profitability for creation through the long tail. Now, if you have to have a long tail, you need to have long protection. So, you need to find a balance for sure. But again, the individual creator that wishes to live from his creations needs, a long protection. I don't know whether 15 years would be enough.
Well, I think there should be a balance between the interests of society as a whole. I think we've seen a bunch of fairly solid studies from places like Oxford that says sort of the societal economic optimum for copyright is something in the order of 10 years. And it might be a bit more for certain things and a bit less for other things, but that's sort of a number that keeps coming up. I think it would be a good idea to go there with the possibility to lengthen it maybe for individual authors if they so choose. But right now we have an existing situation where literally a handful of companies has sewn up pretty much a large part of the global cultural heritage and is holding on to it for literally decades, while they themselves actually came about by not following copyrights and patents. I mean, the reason Hollywood is on the West Coast is because it was 3,000 miles away from the East Coast where Mr. Edison had a bunch of patents. So everybody went west, screwed Edison over his patents, and then they built a film industry based on that. And we all watch that stuff now. So it's a bit funny that